Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am so excited to be here for our second video in the history of the channel. History, even though it just started. So if you are new here, then you should know my name is Vanessa. I am the creator of the brand new pattern design shop for Amigurumi, Glitter Fritter. So Glitter Fritter Crochet was born out of my absolute obsession with all things crochet and especially all things cute and amigurumi. And I thought, because this is our second video, and in the first video, if you haven't watched it, I will link it in the card somewhere and also in the description. But if you haven't watched this video, I kind of introduce you to who I am as a crocheter by going through all my whips so you can see what I'm working on. And I did mention that I'm currently working, so the shop doesn't have any patterns in it yet. When this video goes live, it will just be like another week until the first pattern goes up for sale. And I'm planning to basically release fairly regular patterns there. To do that, I am designing a whole bunch of like little creature in this so that I have something to put out. So it's not just one pattern and then 6 months later you have to wait for another one. So everything is kind of going fast. And I've been working behind the scenes a lot. I have a tech editor now on the third pattern. I have patterns being tested. And so everything's kind of snowballing. But before we do that, I figured, since I already introduced you to the kind of crocheter that I am and the kind of little weirdo that I am, I thought that we could talk about my design process because I'm kind of like bumbling my way through this. I'm very new to designing amigurumi, and basically to do it, all you have to do is dive in. And so that's what I did. I dove right in, like jumped off a cliff, head first, no goggles. No experience of swimming, just went in there. And so we're going to hope that I don't crack my skull and crash in the water while I do this, but I am taking you on the journey and on the adventure of doing it. And I figured I could walk you through my basically how I design. So my steps of designing, and we can chat about that. And I thought it might be really fun to do that because years from now, hopefully, when I am continuing to do this, it might be interesting to rewatch this and to see kind of where I started and what my process was and how it developed. So I thought we could do that. And to do that, I actually am going to be showing you a few things. So I'm going to show you my design notebook and kind of flip through it so you can see how the process goes along, where it gets started. I'm also going to be showing you the final pattern and how I organize that in the printout. I was going to do a Canva, kind of look through it, but because I'm releasing these patterns, I didn't want to really like show the entire pattern. So I did have it printed out, and so we can go through that. And the fun thing that I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you two different versions. And so I'm going to be showing you the amigurumi as I'm designing it, so you can see what that version looks like, and we're going to compare it to the final, and that's going to be really interesting to see. And I have two that we could do that with. So to start things off, my notebook. So I am using just a bullet journal. This is a square bullet journal. I got this from a book subscription box. So if you don't know, I'm an author and an avid reader. I actually have a book signing tomorrow. During this video going out, I will be signing books at an Indigo, in a very big Indigo. And so I have a full day there, but I'll be monitoring for comments and things like that here. But I do have a bullet journal. I also love bullet journal. And I have this one that I got, and I was wondering what I was going to use it for. I was going to use this for a reading journal, and then I realized, wow, this is actually absolutely perfect for amigurumi design. So I got a regular pen. This is just a Muji pen that I use inside, and kind of to show you what the process starts like for me. So we're going to talk about Archibald. So Archibald the Alligator, who is like right there, it's this little guy. He's going to be the first pattern that gets released. He's the one that's being tested right now. So that's going to come out. I've got testers designing it. And so once that's done, he's already been tech edited, obviously. So the pattern's ready. I'm sorry if you hear my toddler. She is my spirit animal, and so there's a lot of screeching because we both screech. We were probably eagles in a past life. Okay, so you can see kind of the notebook here. I'm going to bring it this way so you can see it more. But you can see over here are just rough sketches of what I wanted the alligator to look like. So I start off with very rough sketches. I am a digital artist, but I am not like an artist like that. Like it takes me a long time to do something proper. So I kind of just freehand an alligator and what I want him to look like and the inspiration for that. And then what I go through, so I have like notes that I've taken for myself before, but then what I go through is I divide him up into sections. So you've got the head here, you've got two eyes, we have his tail, his body, and two views of the body that I had here, and we've got his hands, and we've got a flower for the hat, the lotus flower, because he has a lotus flower on his top hat, his monocle, and the big collar that he's going to have. So I divide all these up and I draw them out as separate pieces, because that way when I'm beginning to crochet and I'm beginning to that design process, I can look at these pieces and follow through. The other thing I did for him, just because he was a little bit tiny more complicated, is I drew the pieces again in different views and the way I'm going to follow them, so I can see where the increases will be, where the decreases will be. Because of the way his head was shaped, there was different ways to do that shaping. That wasn't just like a round head and then the legs and the body, and his tail kind of went up and like down again into a point. And so I really wanted to see where those increases would fall, where the decreases would fall, and I really wanted to see the direction in which I would have to start crocheting him, so where that magic ring will start. And I kind of did that for like the main pieces. So you can see on his body, you can see where all the arrows are. So pointing outwards is where I have to increase outwards, so that I know that that's kind of where they'll start. Because sometimes if I wanted like a part of his like head, so let's say I wanted the bottom part of his head to start a bit earlier and the increases, because I wanted that to be lower, I would need to increase only in that specific area and continue flat and the nose part, so that he's got that snout that alligators have. And then I would start increasing kind of in the head, and I would decrease slightly in the bottom. So there's like a bit of a nuance there, but to write that, I needed to know where all that happens. And that's what I draw out here. And then you can see, I just kind of start taking notes. I start crocheting. I go right through it and I start crocheting him, and I write my pattern very, very detailed. So I write, it's almost exactly the same as what it would be in the final typed up version. I don't have shorthand because I just write it. And then when it's time to copy it through, I just copy it. And I find that a lot easier for me. And it's a full pattern over here. And I kind of go through it. I make notes for myself if there's any tips I want to add. So like if something needs an extra tip, or sometimes I'll add like more pictures here so that I know that when I'm doing the final pattern and I'm photographing it for the actual people who are buying this pattern, that I know I need more pictures in specific areas because they might be a little bit more detailed. And I just keep going. And then I did the same thing for Brittany the bunny, but I kind of like simplified her a little bit. I didn't need as many rounds because her facial features and her sculpting wasn't as complicated as Archie's. And then, yeah, same thing. Just keep writing. And I'm working on so sometimes you will see kind of like at the top here, I hope you can kind of see, but I sketch out sometimes how many, like if I'm doing something on a chain and I need to start in the middle of the chain, but there has to be like a certain amount of stitches. So for Brittany the bunny, and you'll see with her dress, so she has a dress that is a big ruffly skirt, and it has a chest piece that comes up and loops around her neck with little buttons. And so this piece had to be centered on the skirt piece. And so I had to calculate, and it's easy to do for me if I just draw the full chain and how many stitches I have and then calculate from there. And that way I know where to start. So that's kind of like what I do with this. And then what I do with the final pattern, so we'll do all the paperwork first. We're accountants. Wait, isn't that some kind of joke for something inappropriate? Maybe we're not those kinds of accountants. We're paperwork people. Let's go with that. And so now you can see that I take it through. I put all my stuff in through Canva just because I had a template that I was using and I shaped it. So I got the template off of Etsy. If you're interested, I will link the template that I got for Canva pattern designs. It's specifically for Amigurumi. It's very cute. And I changed like the heck out of it to make it fit like my style, the branding of the shop, like kind of exactly what I wanted it to be. So I do use Canva. I know people use Word as well, and or Google Docs, and I probably like I would want to do that. But to be honest with you, I'm simplified this pattern. It's not so over the top. There's pictures, but you can print everything black and white. It doesn't have too much going on as far as like decor. Like I don't have random flowers and all this stuff in it. So it is very printer friendly. Like I said, I printed this off. I didn't use that much ink, and I did print it in color. So I tried to keep that in mind for people who do print these out. So the first page is usually a picture of the final, and then you can kind of see I have like my notes that I add in. I'm not going to show you every single one, obviously, but they've got useful tips, how to work on foundation chains, how to work in the back loops of a foundation change. This one has a color change in a bobble stitch, and so I kind of show you that in here. And these are just good notes to keep for yourself too afterwards. I find I love when designers do stuff like that, because I end up going back to these notes instead of having to like look on YouTube or online a video on how to do something, because the notes are right there, right? And then I go through the pattern, and everything that you have seen in that notebook before in that bullet journal, it goes in here, and it gets clarified, and it gets recounted again. And then the tech editor gets a hold of this whole document with the pictures that they took as I'm doing the final design. And when they're tech editing it, they make even more notes, right? So they usually tech editors work off PDFs. That's another reason why I don't like Google Docs, because sometimes when you export and import, and it becomes like a jumbled mess. But all the tech editors that I've worked with so far have wanted a PDF of the pattern to work off of. And so I just export that straight from Canva, give that to them. It's got all the pictures so they can kind of reference if something's off or if they're feeling like it's off. So they do that as well. And then the pattern just continues. And the thing that I like to do as I'm designing this is I make those notes for myself in the bullet journal where the extra pictures will go. But I also make notes, like I'll put the pattern in from the bullet journal into Canva without the pictures. I'll print that out for myself, and I'll make notes on where I need to take pictures, and then I'll start designing. So then I'll start the final work through. And I do that without pictures, obviously, and without looking at the original one that I did, because I find that way I'm basically like my own first tester, because I'll design the pattern, I'll let it sit for like a week where I don't touch it, I don't look at it. I mean, my like gremlin child might run around with it for a bit, but afterwards I come back to it with fresh eyes and almost like no memory of it, because I don't know, maybe I was dropped on my head as a kid, but I have like my memory is going. Maybe it's because I'm getting older too, but like I can't remember what I did. And so I'm literally looking at it the same way that if I was like to purchase this pattern on Etsy, that is essentially what happens. So I'm looking at it with fresh eyes, and I'm basically the first tester for this thing, which works really great. So that tends to work. And now, sorry, my eye just went somewhere. So I'm filming this in my bedroom, just so you guys know, this little corner, as I mentioned in the first video on this channel. But I just realized that I'm looking at the bed, and under the bed, my daughter has taken and arranged, for some reason, all of her bath toys in this little row, like a little Chucky. And they're all in a row, and they're all staring directly at this chair. I don't know what she's trying to tell me, but this is creepy. I'm going to try to ignore that and figure out what's going on with her after. But oh my God, there's like 10 of them in there. It's so bizarre. But now is the time that we're getting to the fun part, where I'm going to show you the before, as I'm thinking and designing, and then the final. And I can kind of tell you like how I tweak them. And I'm going to show them to you for both Archie and for Brittany. Not for Maurice, because Maurice the mouse is still like in progress. But this is what Archie, you can see he's a little bit wacky, but this is what working Archie looked like. So as I start to work on those notes that I'm making in the bullet journal, this is basically the first iteration of Archie. So you can see here, so eyes are a bit wonky. I'm also using a different yarn. So I am using Amigurumi yarn. for my testers. So Amigurumi is basically like, I find it's hard, like it's more of a workhorse yarn, but it's also more like it's easier for me to find. And so if I need more, I can just pop in and get some. It's less expensive because for the finals, I actually use Katona yarn, and sometimes mohair for the furries, like I did for Brienne. And that I'll be doing for Maurice the Mouse. And that gets pricey. And so I don't want to use expensive yarn when I'm frogging and taking things apart and things just don't work out, right? So I'm saving that for my final iteration. But this is what Archie looked like in Amigurumi yarn. I do find, so I did a tester, you probably can't see, but up there, I did do tester tests before I started when I was figuring out what my working yarn will be for the design, for the process, as opposed to my final one. I did test a few yarns, and Amigurumi came the closest gauge-wise to Katona, using the same hook size. And so it was an easy transfer, right? Because there's not going to be a difference from this to the other one. You will see that there is still going to be a size difference, but those are like actionable choices I'm making after I see this working model. So this was Archie when he started. He's rough around the edges. You can see that his collar is quite large. It's quite loose up here. It doesn't have the right kind of ruffle as well. And so his eyes are like a bit wobbly and they're not really quite in the right place where I wanted them to be. So he's different. He's special. He is now a toy in our house, which is kind of where all of these go. But the final Archie, and also like the way that I've worked his monocle is a bit off here, you can see. But just to show you a comparison between him and this is the final. So this is the Katona yarn final. And this one has like, look at the tail. See, like the tail here is facing down. I actually liked it better facing up and more rounded. The spikes are different in this one. His ruffle has more ruffling and it's closer to his neck. It's tighter. The top head is just like a little bit more shapely. The monocle is like of a different length. You can see his eyes are sitting slightly lower on his nose. So these are all conscious decisions that I am making as I am creating the final one. And like the difference, look at these. They're like weird looking little cousins. But the difference on these is very different. I do try to keep the colors fairly close wherever I can to get the samples of the Amigurumi to as close as possible to the final. But these are the colors in the Katona that I pick up first for the final. So that's Archie, and that's Archie's strange, slightly like drinking problem cousin. But that's them. And now I can show you Brienne, because Brienne was a little bit different. So Archie, I really wanted him small. I don't know why. I just pictured him like a little tiny guy. So I made him small. Brienne, I wanted larger. And Brienne, when I was designing this, I knew that look at her hand, doesn't even stand up properly in this one. But I knew when I was designing this and working on this work model, this like initial design model, that she was going to be furry. And so I had to keep that in mind, because once I added that extra strand of mohair, obviously to the Katona, even if I was using the same gauge of yarn, she was naturally going to get larger. I also realized after I made this, so you'll see the difference between the two, she looked like a mouse in this one. So I think I was like channeling Maurice the Mouse for her. I was like already ahead, but she looked like a mouse. So I needed her snout to be a little flatter, but I also needed her head to be larger, because you can see, so Brienne is a ballerina. She's a dancer. Archie is a fine, refined gentleman, if you will. And these are all kind of like Victorian inspired outfits. But Brienne is a dancer. And so I really needed her to have her long dancer legs. And also because I was thinking of like a hare and a bunny with like the long, I really wanted to accentuate those long hind legs that they have. And for Archie, I really wanted to accentuate his snout, but also his belly, because, you know, alligators eat a lot. So he's like a chubby little guy. I love him. So I really wanted to accentuate certain parts of her, but for here, for some reason, the nose was also getting accentuated, which is not what I liked. I liked that she had this giant bow, but what I also didn't like when I realized for this is that I made her dress way too big, so it slides down like all the way down here, right? I also didn't do a big enough bobble for that little bump for her tail, so I wanted the dress to come up higher, to be a little tighter around the waist. I also wanted it to come up higher. So these are all decisions I'm making after I do this, because I wanted the tail to show in the back, and to add the fur yarn. So now for the final yarny, who is so sweet. I am absolutely obsessed with her and the colors. So I knew I was going to do a dark blue. I just didn't have a dark blue in the Amigurumi. But look at the difference between, I'm going to move them a little bit back so you can see, but the difference between the two. So the height is different, but mostly because this one, the final one, has a bigger head, right? And so the height is different. The skirt actually fits around her waist now. Oh, my stand just fell off. That's okay. The skirt actually fits around her waist now. So you can see her tail on the back. She's got a lot of fur. I'm hoping that you can kind of pick that up on camera, but she's got the mohair in there. The bow is like a different shape, and it's a bit smaller. I made the bow a bit smaller. I made this fit better. So she's really like in her outfit now. But it's quite a difference, right, between these two. And it's not just the colors. You can see how the design kind of like shapes and forms and changes as I'm working on the two. So that's kind of my process for now. I'm going to have to set her up without the stand somehow. Hopefully she doesn't fall. She seems okay. But that's the process. And you can see there is quite the difference between the two. So one is just like a little bit wonky and the other one is really finalized. And this is the one that I'll be using for pictures. And that's the one I'm using for the pattern pictures as well. So that's kind of the difference there. I do only do two. Sometimes I have had patterns that I was playing around with and I did like a few iterations on the tester. And I haven't finished those yet, because I think once I get into a point, like when I did these two, the next natural step, there wasn't so many changes to this. The next natural step was just to make the finals and take pictures and do the process of the pattern. But once I get into, like, if I made this and it had like 5 major changes that it needed, I feel like I lose steam and it's almost like I'm not interested in the design anymore. So I have to set it aside. So usually there's only the 2 so far for me. We'll see how it goes. Also, these are very time consuming. So if I was doing, maybe if I was working with like plushies and doing no-sew plushies that were more market friendly, that took up less time, then I could do like several iterations if one plushie took me like a couple hours to make. These take days, if not weeks sometimes, because between the design process and all of the different pieces, it takes me a very long time, and I can't crochet for hours and hours on end because I am, old, and my hands hurt and I whine about it. So they do take longer, and I don't have that much time on my hands to go through that many iterations. So I really have to make sure I nail it. And when it takes too long, I lose steam. I lose, like, my hands start to hurt, and it gets a bit too much. So usually two versions, but that is how I crochet. So there you have it. I hope that kind of gave you a glimpse into the process. I have a few other ideas for videos. I think I'm going to be testing a weird little crochet kit. It's not weird. It's cute. I say weird because I think it's going to be very questionable as far as like quality of what's inside. I'll put that out there. So I think I want to be testing that for one of the videos. But if you want to see anything else, make sure that you comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you feel like giving me a follow here and hanging out with me more, then make sure that you are subscribed and that you hit that bell notification so you don't miss videos from me. And I hope you guys are having an awesome weekend so far. If you feel like seeing me in person and want to see me sign books, which is totally different from this, I'm going to be at the Square One Mississauga location for the next couple of hours when this goes live. So hopefully I'll see you there if you are in Mississauga in Ontario. And we can chat and hang out. We can talk about crochet and books and all types of things. So happy crocheting, everyone. I'm going to leave it at that because I've been blabbing on a lot, and I'll see you next week for another video. Bye.